stopped mid-sentence. My future mother-in-law was still talking, her voice smooth and practiced, the kind of voice that had spent decades making cruel things sound reasonable. But somewhere around, "It's a formal corporate event, sweetheart," my brain just stopped processing. "I'm sorry," I said. "Can you say that again?" She sighed. Not the frustrated kind of sigh. The patient kind. The kind that said she'd expected this reaction and had already prepared for it. "The firm's anniversary gala is a black tie event, Zoe. My husband's partners will be there. Clients' partners will be there. Clients, investors, people who've known our family for 30 years. A pause. "I just don't think it's the right setting for someone in your position." My position. I was a licensed electrician, a journeyman. I'd been with my company for 6 years, worked my way up from apprentice, and last spring I'd passed my master electrician exam on the first try. My crew chief called me the best troubleshooter he'd ever worked with. But to my future mother-in-law, Margaret Holloway, I was just a girl who worked with wires. "I see," I said. That was all I said. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just said, "I see," and got off the phone, and then I sat in my truck in the parking lot of the hardware store for about 4 minutes, staring at a strip mall subway and trying to figure out what exactly had just happened to me. My fiancé called 20 minutes later. "Hey," he said. "So, my mom talked to you?" "She did." Silence. The careful kind. "Look, Zoo, it's just one night. These people are really traditional, and she's stressed about the optics, and she told me I don't fit in because of my job." More silence. "It's not. She didn't mean it like that. She just thinks Mitchell." I said his name quietly, not angry, just clear. "Did she ask you if this was okay with you before she called me?" He didn't answer right away, which was its own answer. "I think it's easier if you just sit this one out," he said finally. "It's one event. It doesn't mean anything." I looked at the subway sign. A teenager in a green apron was flipping the closed placard on the door. "Okay," I said. "Yeah? Yeah, I'll sit it out." He exhaled like I'd given him something. Like I'd handed him a gift by agreeing to be excluded from his family's life because his mother thought my career was embarrassing. We hung up. I drove home. I changed into my work clothes and went out to the garage and spent 2 hours rewiring an outlet panel I'd been meaning to fix for a month. And I didn't think about Margaret Holloway at all. That's what I told myself anyway. I should back up a little. Mitchell and I had been together for 3 years. We met at a mutual friend's housewarming. He was getting his MBA, I was finishing my apprenticeship hours, and we just clicked the way people sometimes do when they're not expecting it. He was funny and warm, and he thought it was genuinely impressive that I could wire a 3-phase electrical system. He used to brag about it to his friends. "My girlfriend could rewire this whole building," he'd say, and he'd sound proud. That changed somewhere around the time he started working at his father's investment firm. It wasn't sudden, it was slow, the way these things are. Little comments, little hesitations. His mother making a remark at Thanksgiving about how I should look into office work if I wanted something more stable. His father asking me, with what I think he genuinely believed was kindness, whether I'd ever considered leveraging my technical skills in a management role. Mitchell not correcting either of them. I'd told myself it was generational, that they'd warm up, that once they got to know me, the job title wouldn't matter. By the time we got engaged, I wasn't sure I still believed that, but I loved Mitchell, and I thought love was supposed to be the kind of thing you chose to keep choosing, even when it was hard. The gala was the 35th anniversary of Holloway and Pierce Capital Management. The venue was a private event space downtown, the Ashcroft Building, one of those restored historic properties that rents itself out for corporate events and charity functions, and weddings for people whose wedding budgets are larger than my annual salary. Margaret had been planning the event for months. I knew this because Mitchell mentioned it constantly, with the kind of excitement that I understood, over time, was less about the event and more about the fact that his mother's approval was something he was still, at 31, actively chasing. The gala was on a Friday night in November. I was scheduled to work. Not because I was hiding from it. I genuinely had a job that night, An emergency call that had come in 2 days before, from a property management company whose commercial building on the east side had been flagging electrical faults in their safety system. My supervisor asked if I could take it. I said yes. I didn't even think about the gala when I said yes, because the gala was not something I was invited to. I told Mitchell I was working. Oh, he said. He didn't ask what job. He didn't ask if I was okay. He just said, oh, and moved on, and I realized he was relieved. The call came in at 9:42 p.m. I was already at the commercial site running diagnostics on a faulty breaker panel in the basement of the building when my radio crackled. Dispatch. There was an emergency at the Ashcroft building downtown, the historic one, the event venue. Their electrical system had tripped something during a large event. The backup generator had kicked in but wasn't holding load. Lights were flickering. The fire suppression system was giving error codes. The building's own maintenance contact wasn't answering. They needed someone fast. I knew the Ashcroft. I'd actually done a maintenance inspection there 8 months ago as part of a city compliance audit my company handled. I knew their panel layout. I knew their quirks. I told dispatch I could be there in 12 minutes. I didn't know until I pulled up to the building and saw the valets and the black cars and the women in floor-length gowns standing outside on their phones that the event at the Ashcroft that night was the Holloway and Pierce anniversary gala. I sat in my work truck for a moment. Then I got out and grabbed my bag and went to find the building manager. His name was a guy named Frank, mid-50s, salt and pepper mustache. The specific kind of stress that comes from being personally responsible for a problem you don't understand. He grabbed my arm the second I walked in the service entrance. Thank God. Okay, here's the situation. He was already walking fast, leading me toward the basement. We had a full load on the main panel. Full event, kitchen, HVAC, everything running. And something tripped the primary breaker about 40 minutes ago. Generator came on, but it's only carrying partial load. The kitchen's down. The elevators are down, and the fire suppression panel is giving me a fault code I've never seen before. And I don't know if that means the system is offline or if it's about to go off and drench 400 people in formal wear. Walk me through what changed tonight versus a normal event night, I said. They brought in extra catering equipment, 6 additional heating units for the buffet stations. And I think someone in the kitchen plugged a second commercial coffee urn into a circuit that was already near capacity. I almost said something about how that's always how it starts. Instead, I just nodded and asked him to show me the main panel. The basement of the Ashcroft is a maze. Low ceilings, exposed pipes. The kind of lighting that makes everything look like a suspense movie. Frank had a flashlight. I had my headlamp. We found the panel and I opened it up and stood there for a minute just reading it. I've been doing this long enough that panels tell me things. This one was telling me it had been pushed past its rated capacity and had done exactly what it was supposed to do. It tripped. The problem was that whoever had installed the generator tie-in had done it sloppily, and now the generator was trying to carry a load it wasn't configured to handle, which was why it was flickering. The suppression system, I said. Where's its dedicated circuit? Frank pointed. I checked it. The fault code wasn't a system failure. It was a communication error between the suppression panel and the main control board caused by the power interruption. The system itself was intact. It wasn't going to drench anyone. Okay, I said. The suppression system is fine. I need you to go upstairs and tell whoever's in charge that the building is not in danger. But we need to shed some load before I can restore full power. That means the kitchen stays offline for now. Tell your catering team no additional equipment gets plugged in anywhere. The kitchen being down, I know. I'm going to try to get you partial kitchen back. But I need 20 minutes and I need nobody touching anything they shouldn't be touching. Can you do that? Frank nodded and went upstairs. I got to work. Here's what people don't understand about electrical work, and I mean people who've never done it and never thought about it. It's not guesswork. It's not intuition. It's logic. Applied carefully, in sequence, with 100 small decisions that build on each other. When you're troubleshooting a system that's misbehaving, you're essentially interviewing it. You're asking questions and listening to the answers. You're building a picture in your head of what should be happening versus what is happening, and then you're finding the gap. I love that part. I've always loved that part. I was maybe 15 minutes in, had identified the specific load imbalance causing the generator to falter, and was in the process of redistributing circuits when I heard voices above me. Through the floor vents, the way you can sometimes hear a party from below, muffled and fragmented, music and laughter, and the low roar of 400 people in an expensive room. Mitchell was up there. His parents were up there. All the people who thought my job was something to be apologetic about were up there, eating food that would have been cold if I hadn't come. I finished what I was doing. I restored the main panel, the lights above me. I could feel it more than hear it, the way the building changed when full power came back online, a kind of settling. Steadied. My radio crackled. "Frank, we're good up here. Everything's back." They're applauding. "I'll need another 10 minutes to finish securing the generator tie-in," I said. "Then you're good for the rest of the night. You're a lifesaver. Seriously." I didn't say anything. I just finished the job. I was packing up my bag when I heard the door to the basement stairwell open. I assumed it was Frank. It wasn't. It was a woman in a silver gown, heels in her hand, who looked like she'd come down the wrong staircase and ended up somewhere she hadn't planned to be. She was maybe 60, dark hair threaded with gray, and she had the kind of face that was still beautiful, but had gotten very good at being composed. She stopped when she saw me. I was in my work pants and my company jacket, my hair in a ponytail, headlamp pushed up on my forehead. I looked exactly like what I was. "Are you the one who fixed the power?" she said. "Yes, ma'am." She looked at me for a moment. Then she said, "My granddaughter was terrified when the lights went out. She has a thing about the dark." A pause. "She's been afraid since her father was in an accident last year. In the dark, her brain goes somewhere bad." I didn't know what to say to that, so I said, "I'm glad she's okay." "The building manager said you knew this system, that you'd been here before. 8 months ago? Maintenance inspection." She nodded slowly. Then she said, "My son is one of the partners whose name is on this event. He was ready to shut everything down and send everyone home. He thought it was a serious problem." "It was a serious problem. It was a serious problem," I said. "It just had a solution." She almost smiled. It was very brief. "Yes," she said. "Most problems do with the right person working on them." She looked at me a moment longer. "Thank you. Sincerely." She turned and went back up the stairs. I had no idea who she was. I found out the next morning. My supervisor sent me a message at 7 a.m. "Call me when you're up." I called. "So you were at the Ashcroft last night," he said. "Yeah." "You know who was hosting that event?" "I do. A beat. The managing partner of Holloway and Pierce called our company this morning. Richard Holloway. He wanted to know who we sent last night and whether they were available for a contract." I sat up straight. "He said the electrical work was exceptional and that the person who did it clearly knew the building better than their own staff. He wants to bring our company on for their new office building they're developing. They're starting construction in the spring. It's a significant contract, Zoe." "Richard Holloway, Mitchell's father. He specifically asked for you by name," my supervisor said, based on the building manager's report. I didn't say anything for a moment. "Zoe, I'll call you back," I said. I called Mitchell. He picked up on the second ring, which told me he'd already heard something. "Hey," he said. "So, my dad mentioned that the company he called to fix the power last night, it was yours." "It was. And you were the one who—" "Yes." Silence. Long enough that I could hear him breathing. "Why didn't you tell me you were going there?" "Why didn't you tell me you were going there?" "I didn't know I was going there. It was an emergency call." "I didn't know the gala was at the Ashcroft until I pulled up." More silence. "My mom saw you," he said. "In the basement. She didn't recognize you at first because of the jacket, but then she came back upstairs and looked at the name on the paperwork Frank had and she—" He stopped. "She what?" "She's embarrassed, so." And there it was. Not she was wrong to exclude you. Not she realizes she made a mistake. She was embarrassed because the woman she'd uninvited. Because the person she'd decided was too low status to stand in a room with her husband's investors had quietly come in through the service entrance and kept the lights on so the party could continue. I thought about the woman in the silver gown in the basement. the one who'd told me about her granddaughter being afraid of the dark? I hadn't connected her to anything last night. She was just a guest who'd wandered somewhere she shouldn't have been. But I thought about what she said. Most problems do, with the right person working on them. Mitchell, I said, I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer me honestly. Okay. When your mom called me and told me not to come, did you know she was going to do that before she did it? The pause was too long. I mentioned that you might feel out of place, he said. I didn't know she was going to call you directly. I closed my eyes. He'd planted it. He hadn't said, don't invite her. But he'd given his mother the seed, and his mother had grown it into a phone call. And then he'd let me absorb that phone call without correcting any part of what had been done. I see, I said. Zoe, I know that sounds bad. I need some time. So, Mitchell, I need some time, please. He was quiet. Then, okay. We hung up. I went for a drive. I don't know where I was going. I just drove the way you do when your body needs to be moving and your brain hasn't caught up yet. I ended up at a park near the river, the one with the walking path that I used to run when I was training for a 5K 2 years ago. I parked and sat and watched a man throw a tennis ball for a very enthusiastic golden retriever, over and over, the dog never once getting tired of the same game. I thought about the past 3 years. I thought about the things I told myself, about patience and giving people time and love being a choice. I thought about my mother, who'd worked double shifts at a hospital for most of my childhood, and what she'd told me when I said I was thinking about trade school instead of a 4-year degree. She'd said, the world runs on people who can fix things. Never let anyone make you ashamed of that. I thought about Margaret Holloway's voice on the phone. Patient, practiced, smooth. I thought about Mitchell saying she's embarrassed, not she was wrong, not she owes you an apology. She was embarrassed. The golden retriever finally collapsed in the grass, panting, tail still going. The man sat down next to him and scratched his ears, and the dog looked up at him like he was the whole world. I took out my phone and called my mom. She picked up on the first ring. I think I need to tell you something, I said. I'm here, she said. Take your time. So I did. I told her everything. The phone call, the gala, the basement, Mitchell's father's call to my company, Mitchell's confession that he'd given his mother the idea in the first place. I talked for a long time. My mom didn't interrupt. She made small sounds. Makai. I see. The kind that let you know someone is really listening. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, You already know what you're going to do. I think so. Then you don't need me to tell you. No, I said. I just needed to say it out loud to someone who loves me. I love you, she said. And so does everybody who's watched you work for the last 6 years. That's not nothing, baby. Margaret called 2 days later. I let it go to voicemail. She left a message that was 4 minutes long. I listened to it once, standing in my kitchen, making coffee. She said she was sorry. She said she'd been thoughtless. She said she hoped I understood that she'd only wanted what was best for Mitchell, and that she could see now that her perspective had been narrow. She did not say she'd been wrong about me. She said her perspective had been narrow. I noticed that. Mitchell texted that night, I miss you. Can we talk? I sat with the text for a long time. Here's the thing about being an electrician. You learn, pretty early, that the most dangerous situations aren't the obvious ones. A live wire that's sparking and smoking is dangerous, but it's also visible. You can see it. You can work around it. The situations that hurt people are the ones that look fine. The ones that have been wired wrong for so long that everyone just accepted it as normal, because the lights were still coming on and nothing had caught fire yet. I thought about 3 years of little comments, 3 years of hesitations and silences, and she didn't mean it like that. 3 years of watching Mitchell choose his mother's comfort over my dignity, every single time, so smoothly and so consistently that I'd stopped expecting anything different. The lights had been coming on. Nothing had caught fire, but the wiring was wrong. It had been wrong for a long time. I typed back, I care about you, and I've been doing a lot of thinking. He responded immediately, Please don't do this. I stared at that for a moment. Please don't do this. Not, I'm sorry. Not, I should have protected you. Just, Please don't make me face the consequence of this. I put my phone down, I made my coffee. I drank it standing at the kitchen window, watching the neighbor's cat pick its way across the fence with a specific dignity that only cats and electrical engineers seem to possess. Then I picked up my phone and typed, I deserve someone who's proud of me, not someone who needs me to be invisible to make his family comfortable. I hope you find what you're looking for, Mitchell. I mean that sincerely. I put my phone in a drawer so I wouldn't keep checking it. Then I called my supervisor back. About that contract, I said. Tell me more. The Holloway and Pierce building project was a 9-month contract. New construction, commercial grade, the kind of work that's genuinely interesting because you're building a system from the ground up, instead of inheriting someone else's problems. My company won the bid in January. I was assigned as lead electrician. I didn't think about the irony of it very much. Or maybe I thought about it exactly the right amount and then put it away. Richard Holloway walked the site twice during the project. The first time, he didn't know who I was. He was there with the general contractor, and I was up on a lift doing something in the ceiling. And he didn't look up. The second time, he was alone, and he did look up. And we made eye contact, and he nodded at me with the specific nod of a person who knows they owe someone something, but hasn't quite worked out how to say it. I nodded back and went back to work. Mitchell reached out once more, in March. A long email. He'd been in therapy, he said. He'd been thinking about patterns. He wanted me to know he understood now. Really understood what he'd allowed to happen. He wasn't asking for anything. He just wanted me to know. I read it twice. I appreciated it genuinely. I believed him. I didn't respond, not because I was angry. I wasn't, not anymore. But because some things, once broken, aren't meant to be fixed. Some systems have been wired wrong for so long that the right answer isn't repair. It's a complete rewire. That's not a failure. That's just knowing when to start over. I got my master electrician's license framed and hung it in my apartment, above the desk, where I do my project planning. It's the first thing I see when I sit down to work. My mother came to visit in April. She stood in front of it for a long time. Your grandmother would have loved this, she said. Yeah, I said. She would have. We ordered Thai food and watched a movie, and I fell asleep on the couch and my mom covered me with a blanket the way she used to when I was a kid. I woke up to sunlight and the smell of coffee already made, and for a moment, before I was fully awake, I felt something that took me a second to name. It was lightness. Just lightness. Uncomplicated. I got up. I drank my coffee. I lifted my license on the wall. Then I got ready for work. I've thought about that night a lot since then. Not obsessively, just the way you return to certain moments when you're trying to understand how you got from one version of your life to another. What I keep coming back to is this: Margaret didn't do anything unusual. People like her do this all the time. They look at a person, read the job title, and decide they already know everything worth knowing. It's not malicious, exactly. It's laziness dressed up as discernment. She looked at me and saw a category, not a person, and she acted on that. The painful part wasn't even Margaret. It was Mitchell. Because Mitchell knew me 3 years and he still let his mother make that call. And then he let me absorb it alone, in a parking lot staring at a subway sign. That's what I mean when I say the wiring was wrong. Not broken, wrong. There's a difference. Broken things can be repaired. Wrong things need to be replaced. I'm not angry about how it ended. I was for a while, but anger is just energy looking for somewhere to go. And eventually I pointed mine somewhere more useful, toward the work, toward the contract, toward building something I was actually proud of. That's what I'd do again. If I had to. I'd feel the anger, use it to move, and then set it down. The thing about cause and effect, the real version, not the poetic one, is that it's not dramatic. It doesn't announce itself. It just accumulates. Every time Mitchell chose his mother's comfort over my dignity, something shifted. Every time I told myself it was fine, it wasn't actually fine. Every time Margaret looked at my job title and saw a liability, she was building a version of reality where she was the authority on who deserved a seat in the room. Those choices, stacked up quietly, over years, Until one November night when the power went out at the Ashcroft building, and the universe arranged itself into an irony so clean it almost felt scripted. But it wasn't scripted. That's the point. It was just the natural result of things being exactly what they were. I think about the kind of woman I want to be, and it's not complicated. I want to be someone who does the work, the real work, the unglamorous work, the work that nobody applauds until the lights go out and they realize what they had. I want to be someone who knows her own value well enough that she doesn't need it confirmed by people who can't see it. And I want to be someone honest enough to recognize when something is wrong and brave enough to stop pretending otherwise, even when stopping is the harder thing. Zoe chose to leave, not because she was defeated, because she was clear. And clarity, I've learned, is one of the most underrated forms of strength there is. It doesn't look like triumph. It looks like a woman packing up her tools in a basement, doing her job with precision and care, and then driving home alone at midnight. Not broken, not bitter, just done. I still have my master electrician's license on the wall. I look at it every morning. It's not a trophy. It's a reminder. The world runs on people who can fix things. I know what I'm worth. And I stopped apologizing for it.